Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, GreyDM, and with me as always is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hello.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight we gather around the table to answer the question, who hunts the monsters of the night? Now, returning guests with us are Drake and Dahlia, as after last week's episode of them creating characters, we're now going to discuss the myriad of antagonists who will be hunting those characters.
I can't wait.
So tonight specifically, as we've moved away from the descriptions of the 13 clans and some of the bloodlines, we're going to mix in descriptions and dives into some of the antagonists in the world of darkness, some of the other monstrous creatures out there, or sometimes how dangerous humans can be if they come after you.
Mm. I mean, come on, they're just squishy bags of meat. How dangerous can they be?
Never expected. Today we're going to talk about the Second Inquisition.
No one expects it. I didn't see this coming.
Oh, no one sees this coming. So, as we mentioned before, the Second Inquisition is basically not a single entity, but an event. So, it's a movement creating an era where risking the Masquerade comes at a cost and shapes Kindred to fear Kine once more. We all know that Kindred basically are specifically designed to be hunters of Kine. Mm-hmm. So usually Kindred basically have to fear other Kindred. They have fear other monsters that lurk in the dark, and they don't really fear the things that they're going around feeding on. I mean, the wolf generally doesn't fear the sheep. Mm. However, in modern times, the sheep have body armor and stake throwers. They're like talking to each other.
And flamethrowers. Yeah.
So it's kind of tough when, the wolf in the den seems like the SEAL Team 6 of sheep coming in with like flamethrowers and lighting everything on fire. So what most Kindred mean by the phrase, the Second Inquisition, is the covert multinational conspiracy that contains multiple intelligence agencies and other groups, including the Vatican, that are actively hunting down the undead, though this does not mean that they are controlled by their respective agencies. Mm. So one thing I'd like to point out quick is we're not specifically talking about hunters. So hunters, which we'll get into later on, is basically another supernatural book that you can play in kind of the same world. It is part of the world of darkness, and hunters may play a part in this discussion tonight, but not everything is hunters. These are first and foremost antagonists for your world of darkness games. So the Second Inquisition is a long-feared event when too many humans peek behind the Masquerade. The Second Inquisition is the name Kindred have given these New Age witch hunters. They are a loose confederation of intelligent agencies. Those under the name First Light are the U.S. branch, including agents of the CIA, NSA, and more. These agencies are usually disguised as anti-terrorism to fool lower-ranking agents and the public of their activities. Their hesitation to make their secret war public is due to Kindred pawns interfering in possible pushback from the public. I mean, if you're talking about government oversight and justifying your claims, it's just like, what's all these steaks and garlic and holy water? And you're like,
You ever heard of Jade Helm?
The new Inquisition has weapons and tactics that have allowed them to burn many havens. Airports are now unsafe for Kindred. Witnesses can be deadly, and messages sent via phone or text need to be careful to not contain any Masquerade breaching terms. Those that don't take precautions in this new era may end up on a list or worse. While the importance of the Masquerade was proven vital, Kindred fears are met with these humans. Kindred are outnumbered by humanity. Oddly enough, this may provide younger Kindred with means to move up in Kindred society in an opportunistic way. So many have died, there's a chance for new Kindred to take their place.
See, that's nice. I mean, you gotta get that older generation retired so the younger generation can move up.
Yeah, this needs to happen. This is essential to a functioning democracy.
Yeah, that's why retirement is important.
The reaction has been all over the spectrum in Kindred society. The factions have had different responses to this. The Camarilla are more guarded with technology, encouraging members to use old forms of spycraft, animalism, ciphers, etc. Some princes even outright ban the online presence.
No more AOL.
The tower. Keith would definitely have an 100%. Keith would have Keith Carlson .
It would be like Keith Carlson 1957, at AOL.com.
1957 Chevy or something like that. It's a little weird throw. The tower has essentially retreated to their old ways and wish to keep their chance of discovery small in this new age, hoping to repeat how they defeated the First Inquisition. The Anarchs are not as shy about tech as they know how to avoid detection with burner phones, dominated humans, flesh-crafted body doubles. Just like to throw that out there.
Minor thing, horrific thing.
Wow.
Some thin bloods can simply... Some thin bloods can simply hide in plain sight or even corroborate with the Second Inquisition. So Kindred have had the occasional pawn or cross paths with intelligent agencies, usually fleeing rogue agents. The Masquerade made the notion of the living dead ridiculous, which served Kindred well, but after the War on Terror, things changed. The Camarilla took a gamble, throwing the Sabbat to the intelligence agencies, which wreaked havoc on the Canites. Yeah, that's not a good
we're gonna give you these.
That's not going to backfire at all.
Well, it's like if we're going to give you these guys that hate our guts, who are basically identical to us in every perceivable way.
These guys are monsters. Okay, what is the difference for you? Well, they're monsters, but you're monsters too, right? Stop focusing on me, okay? They're monsters. As these agencies did their work, they started to find more Kindred evidence, and possibly old bank accounts and questionable records that were discovered. Also, the NSA was freed of most traditional restrictions, allowed even more surveillance. As the hunted
Bush.
As the hunted heated up the tower threw the Anarchs to the wolves, and the flames of the Inquisition was already lit. The Information Awareness Office was founded by Admiral John Poindexter in 2002. The intention was to pinpoint any threats to the USA. The program used investigations and advanced economic algorithms to find anomalies, Camarilla accounts, and high-profile contacts. A result of their attempt to manipulate the War on Terror, this resulted in ghouls, dominated thralls, and even kindred captured, and each were extracted for information. The Camarilla was able to defund the IAO officially by 2003 by manipulating public opinion on human rights, but it was too late. Admiral Roberto Ferrier, Poindexter's handpicked successor, simply obfuscated the IAO's activities under normal Pentagon black budget counterterrorism activities. Without Congress or Pentagon oversight, the shadow IAO could run with Ferrier at the helm from his office in Pearl Harbor.
Where it all began.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, to be fair, if I was running some kind of shadow government organization, I'd probably want a nice office.
Well, not only like shadow government organization, but a shadow government organization that specifically is fighting against something that doesn't like sunlight.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point, right?
Yeah.
Like if I get walk around in like a Hawaiian shirt all day, sipping like, pina coladas, and like I'm just like
every night going into my bunker.
Very much so deep into the bunker. Interesting. He can now direct programs to anti-Kindred activities disguised as anti-terrorism programs. This proves a double-edged sword. He can manipulate the Defense Department, but the resources he pulls need to fit plausible operations. Soon the Second Inquisition got a great gift in the freeing of Felicity Price, Associate Director of the NSA. She was a dominated thrall of a Nosferatu exochical. This gave the Second Inquisition first-hand information on those Nosferatu and some knowledge into the Camarilla structure, clan structures, and a good chunk of the Camarilla network. Price has been instrumental in the formation of First Light. She reaches out to international partners to join the coalition and share information. The Second Inquisition cracked ShrekNet, Kindred internet overseen by Nosferatu, which ignited the flames of the Second Inquisition once humans had access to so much Kindred information. Using shell organizations and secrecy, they are able to operate without scrutiny from the public and governing bodies. So, First Light began to work with others like the Russian GRU, and the Vatican Service, the Entity, providing vital records from the old Inquisition tales. Loose agents in these organizations were able to band together and accomplish major feats. 2008 saw the destruction of the Tremere Chantry in Vienna. And 2000
feeling it.
Deep in the ground. 2013 is the date London was marked as Kindred free with the supposed death of Queen Anne, Prince of London. We have the Fall of London book. That's going to be probably one thing we want to talk about. France had Marseille cleared by the DGSE, forcing Francois Villon into hiding. Black sites are said to have been held a number of captured kindred. They have some major defeats too, such as the Detroit Hunt of 2012, a disastrous raid where the supposed turncoat kindred betrayed the coalition and freed others. This led to the death of many field agents. In the opening acts of this new Inquisition, the Camarilla has taken heavy blows with London and Vienna, but many Sabbat and Anarch havens have been hit the hardest. These events factor into the Giovanni inclination to form the Hecata. The Banu Akim and Ministry are finding better independent clans not as advantageous with domains between the Gehenna War and the Second Inquisition. So yeah, humans be dangerous, yo.
Yeah, and there's so many of them.
That's the real problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you know...
The herd a little bit.
Oh, now we're talking. Now we're talking like
That's
someone who
the
has a single
Sedite
son
talk
and
there.
away. How quickly it goes from art-loving Toreador to Sedite as soon as the Inquisition shows up.
Oh, geez.
So what kind of organizations does the Second Inquisition kind of compose, though? The Second Inquisition may seem like a First Light agent bursting into the Kindred's haven in the daytime, decked out in tactical gear, but it can take a lot of forms. The major government conspiracies raging a secret war is the Coalition. The alliance of agents and hidden use of assets fund the deadly raids Kindred have learned to fear in this new age. Eyes of technology and algorithms, Kindred are tasked with adapting or being burned out. But the Second Inquisition has more than Men in Black and Special Agent. It has individual hunters, conspiracy theorists, and even gang members in its movement. The larger conspiracy from the Coalition are the major concern of most Kindred, but the small homegrown hunters can prove just as deadly for Kindred in the new night.
Just imagining, Appalachian Mountains, just you got Bubba, Ted, and Bob, sipping on their moonshine. They're just like, well, time to go hunt them bloodsuckers.
Actually, they have a name for them. They're called Van Helsings.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because they're like, oh, Van Helsing shows up and my daddy killed vampires on his daddy before him. So the Coalition, this is what the Five Torches, the second party, and the third party hunters call their overall conspiracy. It may be an acronym, code names, or whatever means they need to use to obfuscate their dealings. They can hide their information gathering and exchange at mundane and inconvenient locations while a more flashy event is happening, like various summits or world conferences. A double-edged sword with their effectiveness sharpened, but national interests and personal politics still rearing its ugly head. IAO, First Light, and Vatican's La Entita are major players keeping this conspiracy in line with limitless funds, information network, and mastery of mystical defensives, respectively. The main body of the Coalition is comprised of the Five Torches, but they also ally with secondary partners in other countries. The max number of seats at the table for planning coalition-wide strategy are only 10 or less, though many countries oversee their own domestic tactics when able to. So you might ask, who are the Five Torches?
Who are the Five Torches?
Well, thank you for asking who are the Five Torches. The five most influential countries with intelligence that have information, focus, and funding to fight a war on Kindred. The Five Torches are joined with other countries who have begun to put resources into the Second Inquisition. Though Five Torches are resource-rich, they may not all have the best interest at heart, often being just as corrupt as the Kindred they face. First Light and JTRG use their resources to eliminate political enemies and for their natural interests. It just seems like certain Kindred have already got into these groups.
Yeah.
PMEX in South America recruits human traffickers as well as terrorists to fight Kindred.
Oh.
Okay. Sure.
Not sure who's on the right side of that one.
Yeah.
The growing mistrust of First Light's agenda, or GRU, constant espionage against allies, is a constant thorn in the Coalition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it absolutely seems like the perfect opportunity to be like, hey, we're working together, but...
While you're over it,
Yeah.
the Vatican encourages government corruption to easier bribe officials so they can expand operations.
Tax the church.
Individual farm team hunters deemed a liability. The Coalition is not above tipping off Kindred to deal with them.
Yeah, wow.
Ooh,
Wow,
nice.
these are supposed to be the quote-unquote
Good guys. Yeah.
Better
I'm
than-
liking them more and more.
Wow.
Better the nuisance hunters die to Kindred than endanger the Coalition's operations.
Oh, absolutely. It's for the greater good.
That is some World of Darkness stuff right there. Okay, so the United States. Seeing Kindred as a threat to national security with blood bonds and mental domination of high-ranking officials, they attempt to thoroughly attack the threat. While they seem cohesive to the outside, the U.S. has fractures in its agencies as a competition for funding and jurisdiction are always up for grabs. The Information Awareness Office, also known as the IAO, headed by Admiral Roberto Ferrier in Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
This agency leads strikes, contact U.S. military operations, or calls on private contractors. All of its dealings are classified or falsely mislabeled to misdirect the public and Kindred. They're also the purse of the coalition, funneling U.S. government money for operations while they find ways to justify the cost. So, First Light, headed by Associate Director Felicity Price, originally an organization in the CIA and NSA, the First Light now touches many security agencies. It takes in information and either passes the targets to IAO, SAD, or other agencies to strike, to have deniability. In special cases, it sends its own strike force for high-value targets, recruits thin bloods with promise of revenge, and cures only to send them to experimentation sites.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once again, these are the antagonists for your Kindred story.
Well, I 100% believe that at the top of this whole coalition is a Setite just sitting there laughing his ass off.
At least pushing a few of these people into the right.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go to Pearl Harbor? That's what you base it in Pearl Harbor. I'll find you there. FBI's Special Affairs Division, also called SAD, headed by...
It's so sad. So sad.
Oh, you guys are sad. We get a bunch of crap for that, huh? Headed by Deputy Director Marcus Quester, originally formed by J. Edgar Hoover, fought against the Giovanni and leader Capone while investigating UFOs and Bigfoot.
That's kind of cool.
Fell out of favor for years upon his death, seen as a career-ending department for decades to follow
until
First Light and IAO began. SAD uses its influence in law enforcement extensive case files for anti-Kindred activity, usually using finesse and detective work to get their targets. They have a large collection of mystical artifacts they are reluctant to share. Commandeering Kindred assets give them enough economic freedom from IAO.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
so there's some Black Ops warehouse somewhere just full of artifacts like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I love the fact that it's like kind of like the X-Files where it's like the two people like that have been demoted all the way to that department, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, we just got information from the top. Pull the two crazy people out of the back, and they're like, it's our time to go. They've got like, some Egyptian thing mounted to a gun, and like, we've been training for this. Like, really?
They immediately die.
Yeah, I saw you playing World of Warcraft down there. Okay, so the United Kingdom. The U.S. may have more to say in how the global conspiracy works. The U.K., with the clearing of London, has given their branch prestige. Called the Newburgh Group, as an informal, like-minded group of high-ranking officials. This is spread headed by Sir Simon Newburgh, Scotland Yard, and the mysterious order, the Arcanum, who have documented the supernatural also aid in these efforts. Plans to expand the model to other cities are planned, but the UK's recent political climate has made international cooperation complex.
Brexit speeds it all out.
But the vampires, you gotta get the vampires. They still manage to trade information with the U.S. They seek to expand partnership to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. SO13 is unwanted to many other organizations in the coalition for its tactics. The Joint Threat Response Group, also called the JTRG, directed by Sir Simon Newburgh. This group works as information gathering portion of the UK and European effort with biometrics, X-scopes, and facial recognition technology. While their data mining leaves much to be desired, JTRG specializes in audio and visual surveillance. Faces two issues: hiding the fact that all Kindred in London are technically dead, which threatens their clout, and European nations are not too keen on having a wide-range British surveillance program in their home turf.
We're just gonna move in. We're just gonna hang out.
This isn't colonization.
No,
okay?
this
is not. But we want cameras everywhere.
But why is all the paperwork called colonization 2.0?
Special Operations Branch 13, also called SO13, headed by Ishaq Khan. Officially, SO13 merged with SO12 to make the counterterrorism until SO15 to the SO15 to the British public. In actuality, SO13 remained an independent unit. filled with SAS commandos and Royal Marines and protected by GCHQ. They were the unit to destroy havens in London and supposedly behead Queen Anne in 2012. Overly zealous, wishing to also put Thin Bloods, herd members, and ghouls to the flames as well. Using face masks and decapitations as scare tactics, and their extreme views have made others in the coalition reluctant to expand such agents to the rest of Europe. The Arcanum, made up of occult scholars and hobbyists, and even some members of England's elite. The Vatican and SAD have more occult resources than they, but what they lack in artifact, they make up with an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Their sorceress knowledge aided in the downfall of Vienna. Specialists in ritual magic and knowledge of the arcane, unknown to others in UK organizations, while the Arcanum can divine locations and thwart wards, Kindred magic is still leagues ahead of them. Man, that's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Got Doctor Strange coming after you.
I feel like this would be an awesome movie or series of movies.
Yeah, like that would be really cool. Like to basically write a movie that is probably those type of movies have been written before, but like essentially keep the Kindred at like a full fleshed out level instead, so that they're not just going after like raving vampires. They're going after embedded, entrenched, deep,
They're basically people that also happen to be vampires.
Yeah, that's this right. So you want to talk about Russia?
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
War crimes, but they're dead already, so they're not war crimes.
The Bruja used to have a tight grip on Russia's KGB and information organizations, but we all know how that ended. Bobby ended. The GRU 5th Dictorate was formed to isolate influences by the KGB, which discovered the anarchs and the Bruja pulling the strings. They started their fight against Kindred in the 1970s, joining the Inquisition in 2004, and they had enjoyed stake-wielding Spetsnaz with stakes.
Just give everyone a stake and send them running at the vampires. Eventually, one of them will kill them.
It's the Spetsnaz, so I mean, it is their elite, but still, it is pretty funny.
Just mounted as a bayonet.
Soviets shot stake.
Imagine they've got their gun with a bayonet with a stake tied to the bayonet.
In 2009, their leader resigned and their funding was cut and a massive blow to them. They kept their organization essential, usually only striking out against high-value targets. Even so, they had been fighting 3 decades before the other organizations, so they are territorial in their jurisdiction, especially to UK and the US agencies. Yeah, you think so. The GRU 8th Direction. Called GRU N58 or GRU for short, they consider themselves the more successful organization hunting black bodies, having used the time since their founding to secretly take out influential Kindred. While First Light and SO13 prefer overwhelming force and brutality, GRU sees such a wasteful opportunity, preferring a surgical approach with full briefed agents. They specialize in false flag operations, playing up Kindred faction war. They have a distrust of First Light. GRU is always cautious about sharing resources with the agency, thinking their large number stores are a bigger threat than Kindred. Unit 242 Special Purpose, called U242, they cover the occult aspects and even recruit foreign contractors. This is to have deniability and write off any caught or captured as radical agents. Their units have vampires and supernaturals in their ranks from GRU compromised communities.
That's cool.
Soldiers that show promise are taken to mysterious and dangerous training and pass through the ZMEI protocols to get Kindred-like powers with benefits and no drawbacks.
What?
Oh, this is interesting. Though they develop more traditional Kindred weaknesses, they seldom live long.
Oh,
There's your work crimes.
Hey, where's the other shoe?
I feel like I feel like they're just turning them into vampires, telling them that no, you're still human.
There's a cure. Just like tomorrow morning, you're gonna go walk out in the sunlight,
not even,
and they'll all go away.
Not even like it's a cure. It's just like, hey, no, you have none of the weaknesses, but we're still only going to send you out at night. Because I mean, vampires are only out at night, of course. You might be getting hungry by the time you're done, but that's fine. We'll have a nice dinner for you. We just need you to step into this room for a second.
Then the Cretai, an order originally from the times of Constantinople. The Order tries to present itself to be an independent witch-hunting organization. It, in essence, falls under the GRU unbeknownst to the members. They act as spies for GRU into the Vatican and manpower for operations. Many believe they still have mystical powers. In truth, they use mostly combat skill and modern weapons. The true sorcerers are kept heavily guarded by GRU and restricted from leaving Russian soil except for special circumstances. Wow. Brazil. Brazil agencies are close allies to the Vatican and also for years experienced fighting supernatural forces. Due to the Sombra and Toreador warring over dominance, they were ignored and rather used by princes as tools to attack their enemies. This allowed them to gain more experience and funds from plundered kindred assets. The Vatican brought them fully into the Second Inquisition. Though they are reluctant to expand outside South America, others of the coalition often overlook their experience in fighting supernatural forces. BOES, the Special Secret Operations Battalion, or something, is composed of different unit in Brazil's special operations. It's Spanish. It's a lot of Spanish.
Yeah,
Maybe
Portuguese.
No, Portuguese. Sorry, my bad. I offended someone. That's good. Get in the comments. From all the country, handpicked squads dedicated to vampire hunting. BOE's main goal is to keep kindred influence from oil refineries, political offices, and military bases. This is just like, hey, you just need to keep them away from the stuff we care about.
Everything else, fine. Don't care.
They do on
a
a
story, see a vampire, it's fine. Just they better not be near our oil.
not by jurisdiction. They do and occasionally fight kindred in cities and favelas, having experienced block-by-block methods. The Vatican provides them with artifacts, SAD with support, and IAO with funding has allowed BOES to expand to places like Bogota, Caracas, and Luanda. Caracas? Caracas? Okay. Maybe it turned into Caracas.
It's something very different, man.
Through SPOB, have territory issues and rivalry with commandos dying of old circumstances linked to organized crime. Hiding the effects of the government corruption and the fear of First Light overreach are two pressing issues for them. Let's see. Military police extraterritorial operations called PMEX, formed at the behest of the Vatican with IAO funding. PMEX trains local forces in ways of vampire hunters in the wider South America. Working outside Brazil, the group is composed of militias and insurgents that have lost people to kindred. They're supplied with incendiary landmines as well as trained in staking and decapitation. PMEX still finds itself at a disadvantage, relying on incendiary and mystical weakness, still struggling against motivated hostile kindred. The people trained for PMEX are all strapes, terrorists, insurgents, militias, war criminals, and human traffickers, etc. This fact causes friction with First Light and GRU, but PMXE refuses to argue morals.
Just send monsters to fight monsters.
They also make really great exercise videos.
The Vatican, the heart of the coalition and most fervent. They are the foremost in knowledge of fighting kindred with over 800 years of research. Composed of the Entity, their intelligence wing, and the Society of St. Leopold, the latter of which was founded in 1231 by Leopold of Murnau and Pope Gregory IX. The Masquerade at one point convinced the Vatican the kindred threat was ridiculous and severed ties with the society. Now it has returned full force. In 1998, Ingrid Bauer began a crusade against the kindred. When the IAO and the NSA began to form First Light, Bauer began to make alliances with the US-based agencies. With the Anita and the Society combined against the Vatican, it is a formidable force against kindred. Very interesting.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, so the Vatican has La Anita, which is basically the intelligence agency. They have Gladius Dei, the Entity Special Operations Group, which basically are a subordinate to the Society of St. Leopold. They have the Society of St. Leopold. There you go. This one's subordinate. No longer a loose confederation of lone hunters, they are now more organized in their vampire hunting. The birth of suborders have helped the organization in closer bonds with the entity. They are still freelance when on coalition business or as advisors, but when working in the society's squads, they've adopted modern tactics. Each suborder has tactics, but usually work in teams of 6. Lightly equipped with powerful artifacts and even operating with sorcerers, their zeal for their missions can be twisted by kindred or blinded by darker human impulses and has proved to be their own failing in the past. They have fooled themselves into learning from the First Inquisition, but abuses of power and manipulation Manipulative machinations are prevalent still, just as much as they are in kindred society. There are also corruptors bending others in seats of power to their will. Suborders. Each suborder has tactics, but usually work in a team of 6. So there's suborders like the Children of Lazarus, the Humble Brothers of San Rocco, the Order of San Carlo, the Order of San Paulo. You get it. And then, of course, spread throughout the world are partner organizations. Egypt has the Homeland Special Program. France has La Chalcedon? We'll just do it. Israel has Unit 8211.
Now we're not just insulting like one group of people. We're insulting the entire world with our horrible.
We need to be worldly or in insults.
Yeah.
Poland has Bureau 9. That's what you need. Just Bureau and a number. It's great. So these other groups are sometimes called farm teams as a play on words for them being minor leagues. Not all organizations are part of the grand conspiracy like the Coalition or Five Torches. Some are more contained at lower levels of operation. Vampire hunting is just using weapons and finding out who Kindred is and who is not. They could be gangsters ready to strike back at Kindred for their vigilante work, to an online community posting about strange sightings. To older Kindred, enemies like cops, criminals, theorists, and solo hunters are easy fodder. But to fledgling and young neolates who lack power and connections, they can be major roadblocks or even formidable foes, some of which can even see induction into the coalition. Interesting, huh? So basically, like talking about law enforcement, as like law enforcement catches wind of Kindred activities, they may actually try to basically treat them even if they don't understand what's actually happening. And again, if you just tick off organized crime, like the Russian Bratva, the mafia, street gangs, cartels, like you pick them off enough, and
then they just start coming after you.
Yeah.
It's like, the Bloods and the Crips are coming after me. Why?
And of course, sometimes you just feed on the wrong person, and a conspiracy theorist sees you and starts pointing, attention to you that you don't need. And then, of course, you have the amateurs, the classic solo Van Helsings. Many who think they hear the words of the vampire hunter. They aren't as looming a threat as other farm team members, but they can be annoying with their ferocity. They complicate things, such as it's not really self-defense if they never proved a threat. They can go after touchstones or the much weaker, vulnerable childer. If thin bloods are important to a kindred, they may attack them on the street with large margins of success. They can even turn into incidental serial killers who make hunting harder. Some attack in public unafraid of arrest, banking on kindred holding back.
Or just
banking on the kindred holding back.
Well, it's because it's in public. As soon as they start doing something in public, it draws attention to them, which brings the big leagues after them.
Oh, okay.
But I just think it's funny because at the same time, I'm pretty sure it's like Dwight Schrute. This is like, I killed a werewolf once, and then it turned into my neighbor's dog.
Exactly, it's true. Like. Wow, this is a great show. But yeah, I mean, there's just a bunch of kooks out there, and so some people can actually see something and start thinking that you may actually be a kindred, and maybe they're crazy, but that crazy is also causing them to be very unpredictable, where you could talk a normal person down, Again. So for there to be an equal with these organized groups, aside from just basically organization and like in mass, they also need equipment, right? So what kind of equipment do you think they would use against Kindred?
Are we talking about like as a whole, or are we just talking about the last group?
No, like as a whole, like what are the most effective kind of, we know that like the crazy Van Helsings will probably just start sharpening up, like breaking off chair legs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends if they're after eliminating the target or capturing the target.
True.
So if they're eliminating the target, I would say fire. Just anything having to do with incineration. If we're talking straight up weapons.
Incendiary weapons are a big one. Lethal and effective. They're the bane of Kindred. Tracer rounds might not cause aggravated damage. The others can. This includes Dragon's Breath rounds, Rofus, Hala, flamethrowers, Molotov cocktails, and explosives. So absolutely.
You just have to be careful with stuff like that because you go after a vampire and you end up burning down like a whole apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have the fire department on speed dial.
Yeah. So humans are also very ingenious. And they've basically developed technologies over the time too, with enough money from the governments, basically anti-kindred technologies and techniques can be developed.
The ultimate American superpower. Throw money.
It's true. So, for example, X scopes, which are monitor heartbeat, respiration, and body heat.
Or lack thereof.
Right. They're installed in many airports disguised as cameras. The first generation of them can be deceived by the blush of life, but the second generation looks at blood flow, making it difficult for non-duskborn who are not lifelike to deceive. Many second generation types are installed in international airports. Stake launchers, of course, those are more classic.
Classic.
Phase motion detector, a device known as a screamer as it lets out a high-pitched sound when its microwaves detect motion. Obfuscated kindred do well to not be detected by such traps. So it doesn't matter an observation, it's just detecting any sort of motion, so obfuscate doesn't work around it. Velum Sanctore, also called Holy Veil in English, though known as the Red Gas to Kindred. This is a mysterious weapon only the entity and occasionally BOES uses on high-ranking Kindred targets. To humans, they see nothing. To Kindreds, they see a red mist, hear screams and wails, and experience a burning sensation. Usually used to funnel Kindred into traps. This has appeared in both LA by Night as well as a feature in the game mechanic in Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. Artifacts. This because for all the mystical artifacts many hunters discover and use, there are generally three types of artifacts: icons, relics, and armamenta. The Vatican has a large store of relics, loans them out usually only to BOES, and seldomly IAO and First Light. The Akrita have a collection that favors icons, even though the Bruja destroyed many of them once upon a time. FBI's SAD has a vault with many occult and esoteric items. So basically the three that they're talking about are icons. The term can cover any large installation or tapestry, but statues or carved reliefs are what survive the test most of the time. Made by either occult artists who infuse icons with special properties, or occultists who do powerful geometric ratios to protect places of worship. These items affect kindred upon looking at them, and sometimes vice versa. Some varieties work more on just kindred, Relics. These items make true faith more powerful and act as a conduit, providing unique benefits to the user, or malices to kindred. In the hands of mortals lacking true faith or mere kindred, these items are powerless. Some even cursed kindred for attempting to handle them. And armamenta, meaning equipment in Latin, these are very rare and unique artifacts. They're usually deadly to kindred. These type of artifacts also tend to hurt the user if used improperly. So that's pretty cool. And of course, terms that we've used basically in this little presentation. Blank body is one of the names that they give for kindred. They can all call them BBs or like boy beds, like a bunch of weird names.
Boy beds?
I think it's one of the things that like the writers thought they were really clever on is basically coming up with weird things the government would call kindred that don't make sense to us.
Yeah, I guess.
So instead of being like, oh, it's a zombie, it's a Zed, they basically created a bunch of weird like B settings. But like it kind of makes perfect sense because if you're playing like a kindred group and like you want a bunch of the like basically hunters come in or a bunch of people from like the Inquisition come in, you want this weird alien separation. So for them to call you something that makes no sense to any kindred like fits into the...
It has to be something. You can't literally if you're like, oh, we got a vampire over here, somebody's monitoring the radio, they're like, oh shit, they're on to you.
But like imagine being a kindred and you're like, oh man, this guy's been following me around and there's like, we got a BB. What the heck is a BB? Like, that makes no sense. It's like, it's a blank body. Oh. But, like, it's still, like, it's just such a...
weird.
I think it's kind of... I like the way they flavor it. And, like, a lot of this also came from kind of how they characterized it on LA by Night. Like, because they had basically, famous Brendan Mulligan played a priest hunter. It was pretty cool. But anyway, so there's a bunch of stuff that they kind of brought in. But anyway, so the Coalition, we already touched on that. Farm teams, which is the name for hunters outside the Coalition, which is a tongue-in-cheek way of saying these outsiders are the minor league. And X-Tech is basically vampire hunting gear that is rare and expensive. So put all of these into the hands of the antagonist for your campaign and you get some problems for your kindred.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, it honestly, to me, almost seems overpowered, so you kind of have to make it few and far between, make it expensive, make it difficult to have that equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that they talk about in the Second Inquisition book is like that basically in the vampire game, the players essentially are playing a game that's unfair most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you putting in the Inquisition as kind of a threat, especially if they've screwed up,
Yeah.
is meant to be unfair. Like
Right.
it's the vampire is not a fair game.
Right.
Like we've gone over this with the disciplines. It's not meant to be a fair, balanced, like mathematical game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a game of politics, and when you've lost the political edge of a situation, like everything is bad.
Right.
And that's kind of like proven here in like basically if you tick off people enough that like the Inquisition gets an idea of where you are, like you're just in perpetual danger.
Mm-hmm.
And none of your fancy blood work is going to
Doesn't
make a difference.
matter.
You flee, you know.
And it's like, oh God, you killed one of them. Well, there's 20 more behind them.
Who freaking cares? Like, yeah, like it's a game of numbers.
Yeah.
So, but it is pretty interesting, and it's like I do think it's a point of like you just don't have like the Inquisition's not sitting around every corner.
No.
Like
no.
this is a highly trained and a highly deployable group of people who have to cover an impossible landscape.
Right.
So the whole key is information, and that all details back to the first principle you learn of playing Vampire the Masquerade is the Masquerade.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that protects you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it really puts a hamper on you doing something in a game where you're going to a very highly populated, traveled area and doing something stupid. Because it's like, oh, this is the type of place where they would expect someone to go through. So they're going to be looking for people like you. So there's going to be a chance that, yeah, in a normal situation, you could run away, you could obfuscate, you could do whatever. But like you said, you go to an international airport or something like that where they actually have equipment that's designed to spot you and find you. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have gone there.
the other really cool kind of take on it too, especially with our Florida game too, is like Spring Break.
Yeah.
And just like the plethora of cameras and people recording themselves.
Absolutely.
And just like the algorithms that are probably running in the AI, like, you know, basically learning algorithms out there that are just searching for evidence of Kindred, and then like how ticked off local Kindred are if you get spotted.
See, the way I kind of see it as fucked up as Florida is for all the other things, I kind of feel at the same time they're like on top of that. They're just like, this is something we've been dealing with from like the 80s. So like we've had to stay on top of this, you know, like, yes, they're coming in with their technology, you know, doing whatever, trying to spot us. There's all these cameras everywhere, but we figured out a way around that.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of feel like that's the one thing that is like, no, we got this.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's not a way around it so much as like they're like, these are our
They're
specific rules.
Yeah.
And if you obey the rules, we you know, everybody's like figured out. Like,
Mhm.
but if you don't, you know, if you don't obey the rules or if you don't know the rules, this is when you
Right. Right.
What do you think, Drake?
I think this is going to be a very, very interesting. I have some things that I am now concerned about.
I am in danger.
Yes, I mean, in reality, aside from like one game I can think of, we've never really had a game where we dealt with anybody that was specifically designed to take out vampires.
Yeah, because like you said before, it always feels, especially if you're playing a bunch of TTRPGs, as kind of like a, you know, icky.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really fair. And it's so fun to have like this wide range of things showing up because the unknown is really great. I think personally, the way I feel is like it really needs to be a response to the players not cleaning stuff up.
Yeah.
That's the whole mark. It's kind of like the 5-star alert on Grand Theft Auto. Like the DM just, the storyteller just needs to keep that mark. And then every time they start doing something, like, oh man, that's another star, you know, like.
Oh, they quieted down for a little while, or one of the stars went away.
Yeah, but then when you hit the 5-star, you're like, woohoo! Can't wait to see you guys next week.
Yeah.
So Georgia's looking real great. I hear it's lovely this time of year.
All right, well, we got a little bit of time, and so I have, much like we did last week, where Owen presented a character, I have a character to present. It's not as long as Owen's was.
Sorry.
No, that's great. It's not as artful as I was either. I think this is a little more simplistic, but, you know, I would love to take get your opinion on it and see if you guys think this is interesting. This is, let me know what you guys think about this. We're going to be talking about Harold Weston.
Harold.
Yeah.
Wow.
And key listeners of the podcast will probably know as soon as I say his involvement in a couple of things exactly what he is. But I want to like go through the whole thing to see if you know what your thoughts are on him. Harold Weston was born to a poor farming family shortly after the beginning of the 20th century in South Dakota. So he came to age with an abusive father who could not escape memories of the Great War and the hardships of the Great Depression. He relied heavily on turning to the things that could not be taken from him, which was his imagination and his art. Cultivating his skills with hewn charcoal and scraps of butcher's paper and old newspaper, he routinely dove into the world of whimsy and spectacle that filled his head. Despite the protests of his parents, Harold left his small rural town and headed west with the migrant workers, hoping to find a way out of the future laid before him by his family. In a rare stroke of luck, a chance encounter in a diner late one night led to a life-changing entry position at a young animation studio, and Harold got to work on what most were calling Disney's Folly. With the success of Snow White, Harold's future seemed secure as he enjoyed making his place within the group of artists. A few years later, the world descended once again into war, and Harold was drafted into the conflict. In a cruel twist of fate, Harold was thrown headfirst into the crucible which forged his abusive father, and his fragile mind began to fracture. When his sire found him, a broken man, desperately clutching to the loose collection of drawing papers amongst the war-torn battlegrounds of France, Harold's mortal life ended and a new chapter began. The next 2 decades were a blur, a whirlwind of dangerous nights spent across recovering European cities, but furiously evolving his artistic skills and set and embracing his newfound role as a predator of the night. After a sobering encounter with the Sabbat pack and the loss of his sire, Harold booked passage back to his homeland and set out to find a place to call his own. Returning to a country very different from the one he left, Harold was once again offered a lifeline by the Great Mouse. Working his way into the team of Imagineers who were bringing to life the happiest place on earth, Harold found again an outlet and an audience for his creations. Far removed from the simple sketches of a poor farm boy, Harold began to cultivate his influence within the growing cult of the mouse and add his particular touch to various projects across the years. Long established as something between an eccentric relic of the past and a valuable mentor for newer generations, Harold has cultivated his place within the southern Florida ecosystem, offering his particular flavor of the dark gift to those that venerate the institution that has been such a safe harbor for him and other lost such as himself. Harold has maneuvered into a position of authority within the clan and kindred society despite the political winds of change that threaten stability. It's pretty easy to tell.
Yeah, it's Toreador Primogen, right?
Want to take a guess?
Well, I got the Toreador part. I'm still blanking on his position.
No, he's definitely a Primogen. He's the Malkavian Primogen.
Oh,
damn.
wow. You focus so much on his artwork and everything.
Because it's his obsession.
Yeah. Gotcha.
He's the cult of the mouse.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's also, he's into the Imagineers, right? So he's talking about, that's why he's cultivating experience. So imagine the Malkavians creating all those rides and all those experience where everything's like a little fractured because they're trying to figure out how to get into people's heads.
It's a small world ride.
Right?
No, it does make sense because, I mean, I was leaning towards Malkavian, but you focus so heavily on the art. But I was leaning in Malkavian at first because you talked about when his sire found him, he was broken by the war. And I was like, that sounds very Malkavian.
Yeah. I really like the idea that basically, essentially over the years, he's essentially instituted this thing where throughout like the parks, there's this kind of network and this kind of cult of like the madness of that world. They were talking about, I was watching a thing earlier, I think it was late last night, where people are talking about these adults that go to Disney theme parks. And Disney has a very strong rule that you can't cosplay because they don't want kids to be confused. So they have this whole specific code that like all these fans have followed of adult cosplaying characters where they're like, well, I'm not really dressing up the character, but I'm just wearing what they would wear.
Yeah.
And they go like
similar colors. And
it's just madness. And it's fascinating, but there is definitely Malkavians who are like, oh yeah, this is the calling. Everything you need to know is in the Disney library. I can find all the secrets.
See, I would actually go the opposite direction with Malkavians, and I would be like, this is crazy. Like they straight up, there's like there's something wrong with these people. And like their thing is like trying to call out that madness. but everyone calling them crazy is like, no, it's just people having fun. They're just having a good time. It's just like, don't you see what's happening here?
That'll be fun. I might have to make like their clan whip. Like, he's the one who's like, he's just sane. Like, he's not even a Malkavian. He's just a caitiff. But they're like, no, you're part of the clan.
You might have just chosen something for me. Like I was on the fence about something. And I'm like, oh, you might have just pushed me over.
Well, very interesting. We'll have to see.
Oh, very much.
We'll have to see how Harold integrates into society with so many wonderful new kindred about to join it. Well, I think that pretty much accomplishes what we wanted to do tonight. Hopefully, all you fresh, young-faced kindred now have a little something to fear. And it sounds like Owen has a little bit of a creativity.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of creating that need to go. As always, we appreciate you guys sitting here and listening with us, and we're going to continue this as long as you're willing to listen. So, does anybody else have any last words for the recorded podcast that is no way being parsed by the Inquisition?
Avoid the mouse.
I mean, clearly, we've seen a lot of Toreadors in recent weeks, so that seems to be the best clan.
Nah, they're just common, mid.
They're overdone, honestly.
Yeah. There's just so many of them. I mean, you got to focus on the other clans, a little bit.
Art can be many things, including flesh. With that brutal imagery, I think we're going to leave it. All right. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.